Well, good afternoon. First, just want to welcome every member of the press and continue to reiterate our appreciation to the rights and the freedom of the press during these turbulent times where your lives are being put in challenging situations, and we do appreciate members of the press. I want to share that first. Just kind of lay a little bit of the ground rules for kind of going forward. Since we're now, in addition to being in a long-term pandemic, I think we all understand that the nation and the nation's cities are all experiencing evolving circumstances as it relates to the protests of George Floyd and his impact to each individual city that's also experienced the loss of life from black men and women across this nation. And so as we continue to understand that there are peaceful protests, there are also individuals that come to destruct and destroy that are not peaceful. And we want to ensure that there is a segmentation. I wouldn't be here today as mayor of Little Rock without peaceful protesters. But as the mayor of Little Rock, I want everyone to understand that it's my job to protect our city and not allow outside forces to create destruction within our city's property. And it's my first priority to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of the city of Little Rock. And that's what we will do. And those that commit vandalism and property damage will be addressed. And so as we will move forward, we intend to have frequent briefings, maybe not daily, but definitely frequent briefings as these times that we are in are evolving. It's our commitment to ensure that the city of Little Rock has an accurate understanding and the perspective from the city of Little Rock of what's going on as it relates to this period of time of protest. So we'll start, and then we'll have these questions. And to ensure accurate understanding, I'm going to do my best to repeat the questions that are being asked. Many viewers aren't able to understand what reporters may be asking, so I will repeat the question and then respond. From that point on, we're going to allow Chief Humphrey to kind of do a brief run-through from a Little Rock perspective into last night. Chief Humphrey.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Like I said yesterday in starting off, I want to thank the citizens of Little Rock who have peacefully exercised their First Amendment rights. They have made me proud as the police chief. They've been working with us. We've had multiple meetings with organizers to get an idea of what they require from us and what we would need for them. So I'm going to always start out by talking about how our citizens, how peacefully our citizens are responding. But what I will tell you is that yesterday we had, as we've had all week, a unified command, which consisted of several law enforcement agencies, that being the Arkansas State Little Rock Police, Arkansas State Police, I believe Sherwood Police, Pulaski County Sheriff, North Little Rock, and that's worked extremely well for us because it goes to show the close-knit partnership that we have with those neighboring agencies. And if I'm forgetting someone, please forgive me. But, the main purpose is to maintain peace and public safety in the city. And so last night, we did have an assembly near the Capitol. As you know, the mayor issued an emergency declaration for an 8 o'clock curfew. We had many citizens that complied with that curfew. Unfortunately, we had some that did not. At some point last night in the downtown area, a certain group of individuals committed acts of vandalism. Also, instead of staying in one large group, they started splintering into smaller groups. We had to, they went through certain areas, breaking windows and other forms of vandalism. They were arrested last night. A total of 79 people were arrested. and transported to Pulaski County Jail. They were arrested for obstructing government operations. You know, the message that I want to get across is that you cannot, you know, when the mayor enters or puts a curfew in place, that's exactly what it is. There's a reason for that. And, you know, if you're abiding by the law and you're in the assemblies earlier than the curfew, we appreciate that. However, if you are not abiding by the law and you're going past the curfew and you're committing acts of destruction, there is a possibility that you are going to be arrested. And the unfortunate thing is sometimes we're unable to determine, depending on the size of the group, we may not be able to determine who's peaceful and who are not, because if there's a large group and we see that vandalism and you know, our officers' safety is in danger or the safety of the citizens are in danger, unfortunately, we're going to make those arrests. That's going to be the last ditch effort. We don't want to do that, but unfortunately, when you're attempting to destroy our city and you're in violation of the curfew that the mayor has put into place because he believes that is what's needed to keep the city safe, you're going to get arrested. One of the things I want to share with the citizens is that the assistance that we're receiving from the other agencies allows our police officers to continue to respond to the calls that our citizens are placing and provide the service that we've always provided, that being top quality service. So when we are able to have a unified command with the assistance of the other departments, the Little Rock Police Department, we're still answering the calls and responding to the needs of our community. But, you know, if not for the assistance of the other departments, we would be stretched thin. And so I wanted to share that with the citizens so they know that we are still here. We are your police department, but we are, at this point in time, we do need assistance from other departments. Mayor?
And to share, we want to ensure that it's understood that Chief Humphrey is in complete control of the Little Rock Police Department. But in these times, there's times that you do have to coordinate a part of this process, and we want to make sure that it's very clear. And if you understand what's going on within the Unified Command Executive Order, you really have to read the Executive Order in its entirety. Clearly, while we respect Governor Hutchinson's emergency order, he has not put in place, at least has not communicated to me yet, and he and I visit often and visited this morning, that he has not put in place the situation where the state police is in complete control, because we are working in a unified fashion together. And so Chief Humphrey is still in complete control of the Little Rock Police Department, but we are working together because we do have, again, credible intelligence. There are outside forces that are instigating violence. And in these trying times, we want to ensure to the peaceful protesters, which we wholeheartedly support, stand in solidarity with them and what they are peacefully protesting for, that there are other folks who are coming not to be peaceful. And sometimes in the situation, it's hard to decipher peace between destruction when all are congregated together. And so what we are asking is for the peaceful protesters is to understand we want you to continue to be peaceful, but know that there are other folks around you that are coming to be destructive. And it's hard sometimes to decipher between the two. So please, everyone, please remain peaceful. And to those outside forces, you will be addressed as what happened this past evening. And so clearly I know there's a number of questions that the press want to have. The point of this is during these trying times is to ensure that the residents of Little Rock have the Little Rock perspective, and that we ensure that the press is able to ask some questions. And I'll be asking who wants to ask the question, and then I'll be repeating the question and then giving a response to ensure that everyone understands what's going on. Shelby?
Mayor, through your spokesperson, Stephanie Jackson, she told KTV that businesses past this 8 p.m. curfew. Do you have any guidance for both patrons and business owners how to manage the curfew? We do know that Little Rock Police are not being out past curfew, but kind of give people who are not
Well, first, Shelby, again, I'm glad that you are here and safe, and we do appreciate you and what you've been doing. We know you've been in the midst of some chaos, and so we want to acknowledge you from that standpoint. To the viewers, Shelby Rose has asked that in regards to the curfew, what does it mean for businesses and restaurants? If we all can recall, I believe on March the 12th, when the city of Little Rock instituted its state of public health emergency, one of the things that were part of that state of health and public emergency through a series of executive orders from this office were curfews, as well as restaurants moving from in-person dining to takeout, delivery, service, and curbside services. So we're still in a state of public health emergency at this point in time. When we instituted our curfews back on March 12th, it's the same as June 3rd. Our curfews have a workforce exemption. As we understand, under the governor's state of public health emergency, which is different from the governor's state of emergency, that the city of Little Rock and no city in the state of Arkansas can impede commerce. However, mayors through our state of public health emergency can issue curfews, and we have issued curfews, and all of that is above board. But part of that process in our curfew, in our executive order, there is a workforce exemption. So if you are traveling to and from outside of the bounds of the curfew, meaning whether you are a restaurateur going home at 8 o'clock at 8:30 at night, or you're a manufacturer worker that works over the overnight shift and you're going home at 2 o'clock. The Little Rock Police Department will not pull you over unless you are committing a crime or have a reason to be pulled over outside of the curfew. And so no one will pull, the Little Rock Police Department is not going to pull you over if you are working and headed home. So that's the same as it was today on June 3rd as it was on March the 12th. Again, we can't tell a business what to do in regards to when they open and when they close because of their commerce restriction, but we do have a curfew in place for the residents of Little Rock with significant workforce exemptions. The same, nothing's changed from June 3rd than what had changed on March 12th with the existing state of public health emergency for COVID-19, and this executive order is an amendment of existing executive order.
I do have a follow-up with that. So does that mean that, I know there's a workforce exemption, so does that mean that people cannot dine in restaurants past 8 p.m.? Is that going to affect people to dine in if that's what you're implying?
Well, again, as the mayor of this city, I'm always cognizant to the economy of Little Rock, and we have a vibrant economy. And this is a city that, in the midst of a pandemic, has been able to recruit Amazon not only for one location in Southwest Little Rock off of Vimy Ridge Road that's going to have about 600 jobs, but for a fulfillment center of 80 acres that's going to be at the Little Rock Port Authority, and it's rumored to be somewhere between 2,000 to 3,000 jobs. We promote economic activity. We've had great economic activity in the midst of this public health pandemic. And again, nothing's changed from March 12th to June 3rd. There's still the workforce exemption. And so for the business community, your mayor understands that this is inconvenient. Believe me, we want you to have those hours, and we do not fully intend to have this 8 p.m. curfew for the long term. We are monitoring. It could be lifted as early as Friday. But we want to monitor each day because we also, in addition to worrying, being very concerned about our economy, our top priority is public safety. That's the number one priority. We can't have a vibrant economy if we don't have a safe city. Next question, ma'am, Ashley. In the last 24 hours, the question everyone, Ashley Godwin, is it Godwin? I apologize. Well, please, everyone, please state their name so I don't get anyone's name mixed up. Also, I do apologize, Melissa. Melissa has asked the question, has I received any new threats over the past 24 hours? The answer is no. Yes, Rachel. Chief Humphrey can speak to that. And the question for the viewers is rumors of outside forces that with the name of the word Antifa is the question from Rachel versus the other outside forces that we are speaking to in regards to the classified intelligence that we received not only from the Little Rock Police Department but as well as from the U.S. Attorney's Office. Chief Humphrey?
Yeah, thank you for that question. We continue to get those that type of information. It's always fluid. So we are aware that there are outside sources, such as Antifa, that are here participating in these events. There are others. And so, we continue to address those as they come. We know that a lot of the chatter on Facebook or some of the chatter on Facebook may not be accurate. But unfortunately, in this line of work, we have to take every situation seriously. So when they come in, we do have to vet those. And so we'll continue to do that as they come in. That's part of that unified command because we have federal, state, local, and county agencies working together and pulling all their intelligence. And a lot of times we all get the same intelligence, and sometimes we get different intelligence, but we have to pull all that together and vet it. No, the curfews, and the question is, how do we handle the peaceful protesters that go beyond the curfew? And so that is a good question, and sometimes it's difficult. And what we have said is that I think there's more people who are participating in these protests that understand the curfew is in place. So what we've been seeing in his latest yesterday and the night before, we had a 10 o'clock curfew 2 nights ago, and people are leaving at 9:45 because they don't want to violate the curfew. They don't want to take a chance of getting in trouble or being stopped. And so it's the same thing with the 8 o'clock curfew. You do have that group that's going to obey or comply with the law and leave in enough time to get to their cars and hopefully get home. The sad thing about it is sometimes the peaceful protesters may not know who the non-compliant protesters are. And so, and I go on to say the sad thing about that, if they continue to protest or then someone starts violating the law as far as, vandalism and things like that, sometimes those individuals just get caught up in the situation. It's nothing intentional. We try to do an investigation to get as much information as we can, but there are going to be those times when if you're with that group that's causing vandalism, you might be arrested. And so there's really not an easy answer to that. Sometimes it's a fluid deal. Sometimes we have to move really quickly. But the only thing I can say is that I hope more people realize the curfew is 8 o'clock. There's a reason for that. And if you're going to be out protesting, try to end the event as soon as you can, well before 8 o'clock, so it gives you an opportunity that you won't encounter law enforcement if we do have those individuals that are causing problems. Yeah, we have, last night we arrested, a total of 79 individuals were arrested, and they were transported to Pulaski County Jail, and they were fingerprinted and released. So yes, we will be transporting people to jail and it's obstructing governmental operations, and that's what they were arrested for.
Rachel, we'll come back to you, Shep. Could you repeat the question just so I hear it so I can repeat it back to the viewers? I think as we shared, nothing has changed from yesterday as it was. The question from Rachel was my thoughts or reaction to Governor Hutchinson's executive order for the Unified Command in reaction to, I believe, Rachel, incidents to members of the press. I want to make sure I was, and everyone who was arrested. Again, I think I've shared it. I'll start from the arrest back up. Again, I stand in solidarity with all peaceful protesters for the reason of why they are protesting at this point in time. We continue to encourage peaceful protests and peaceful protestors. And I think we all have to understand the essence. If you understand history, a protest is not meant to be convenient. It's meant to create some type of inconvenience. And peaceful protesters also understand if there is a breaking of the law, they understand that there will be some type of arrest, particularly if it gets outside of legal authority. It's my job as mayor of the city is to maintain peace and protection. And so, again, I stand in solidarity with peaceful protestors, and I believe all peaceful protestors understand the possibility to be arrested from that standpoint. And so, again, I fully support those peaceful protesters, but also I have no tolerance at all for those detractors, those that are creating chaos and havoc by vandalizing property here in the city of Little Rock. And those are two different things. We got peaceful protesters and we have outside forces. We support peaceful protesting. And what you've seen, the restraint from the Little Rock Police Department over the past weekend by allowing peaceful protesters to protest. But when things turn to a level of violence, we have to maintain peace and protection here in our city. So that's from that standpoint. I want to make sure everyone's clear. There's a difference between a peaceful protester as well as those that are creating violence, and we will always address those that are committing a crime and violence from that standpoint. As it relates to Governor Hutchinson's emergency order, he's the governor of the state of Arkansas. I can't tell him what to do or when to do. We understand that we are working together from this past weekend because we are experiencing trying times when you have outside forces that are coming into your city causing chaos. We do have to work with the state police to coordinate. That's what happened Saturday night, Sunday night, Monday night. The only difference between last night and Saturday, there was more visibility. But Chief Humphrey is still in complete control of the Little Rock Police Department. Now, there is a clause that the governor can make a decision at a moment's time now that we have this emergency order to allow for the state police to be in complete control. The governor has not made that decision. He and I have visited about that. He understands that Chief Humphrey is in complete control with the Little Rock Police, and the Little Rock Police is working in coordinated fashion to maintain peace because, again, we have a number of people who have entered into our city, and right now we have about 265 members of the Little Rock Police Department that are on patrol. And so, of course, if anyone understands Little Rock, we're a city of 200,000 people, but we're 124 square miles. And so we are thankful for coordination, but LRPD is in complete control of the chief of police here. We are working in coordination, and we will continue to protect peaceful protesters. If you're not a peaceful protester, you don't have too much to worry about. If you are someone that's committing violence, you will be dealt with. Yes.
Yeah, I know that 44 of the arrests were made by Arkansas State Police, and then the other agencies. I know we made 14 of those, and so there were a couple other agencies that that had a number of arrests. The majority of the people from that I saw were from the state of Arkansas. There were from North Little Rock. There was some Little Rock. There was, I believe, Conway, Searcy. So not all were from here. There were some from outside of the city of Little Rock that were arrested also.
Shelby?
Only part of my question got answered earlier. Can you clarify if people can shop, dine in?
Again, nothing's changed from June 3rd to March 12th, restaurants can decide when they close, but if you are a member of if you're a Little Rock resident outside of curfew, and you're not traveling to work or to and from work, you are outside the bounds of the curfew. Nothing's changed since March 12th. Yes, Rachel? Chief, the question was for Chief Humphrey. If majority of the arrests recently have been Arkansans, why aren't majority of the arrests from out of state? Chief Humphrey?
Because they're so well organized, they know how to antagonize and stay out of the way. It doesn't mean that outside citizens from outside of Arkansas were not involved, but these are the ones that we arrested. So I want to just make that clear. It doesn't mean that outside citizens from adjoining states or all over the United States, just because they weren't arrested, it doesn't mean that these individuals are not actively participating in these events, and that they are not being antagonizers. So I just want to make that clear. That was a good question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So the question was, who made the decision to make the 79 arrests? That's the question. Before Chief Humphrey answers, it's 79 arrests, so you know it's different people who are making arrests at the same time. So Chief Humphrey, you would please walk through, just help everyone understand the arrests from last night.
Yeah, it's based on who is in that area, which department is in that area. And then there, like I said, it's a unified command. So it depends on, and the city's broken up into zones where we have different representatives from different agencies. So it just depends on who's in that area that makes the arrest, who observed it. So that's the way that works.
The question is, do we have confirmed intelligence of outside forces? Yes, we have confirmed intelligence. I've received confirmed intelligence from U.S. Attorney Cody Highland, and I also received confirmed intelligence that the Little Rock Police Department has received. Chief Humphrey, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, when we mention a name, we are pretty confident that that's accurate information. So yes, we know for a fact that we do have members of Antifa here in the city that are participating in these events.
U.S. Attorney Cody Highland of the Eastern District. Rachel? So Rachel asked the question, what is the city doing in response to the peaceful protests as it relates to many, while the peaceful protest is done in the name, the life, and legacy of George Floyd, I think anyone that understands the issues that stem as George Floyd being a large catalyst, many times if you understand history, many movements have received a lot of vibrancy through the viewing of victims. When you look at when Emmett Till was murdered and he had an open casket, it really served as a stemming for the movement of a forward movement of the civil rights movement. And so what you're seeing right now with George Floyd is not the first victim of police brutality in our history, but what we have seen is pain and suffering being built up by seeing a black man dying after 8 minutes on TV. And so it has really created a nationwide movement of how do you, as cities and states, create more police reforms and accountability. I think anyone that knows me personally and knows my professional history and knows my history of growing up here in the city of Little Rock, that while I have the utmost respect for the Little Rock Police Department and any member of the law enforcement community, but as the mayor of the city, I did campaign on police accountability. And if you talk to any member of the Little Rock Police Department, they welcome accountability. They welcome that type of scenario. And so what have we done here in the city of Little Rock as it relates to police accountability policies? We've done a lot. I think anyone will share that Chief Humphrey and largely Assistant Chief Bewley, Assistant Chief Hayward Finks, Assistant Chief Alice Falk, Captain Temple, and many others worked hard in the midst of, it's no secret that there were some national news before me taking office with no-knock warrants. And so Chief Humphrey and his leadership team worked to, when he was hired, worked to implement. Larger Wheels a lot was kind of done before he actually got there. He helped be a part of that process. And so he implemented, along the leadership team of the Little Rock Police Department implemented a no-knock warrant threat assessment that has helped with that process. So that's number one. Number two, we have passed a citizens review board to create more accountability and community engagement as it relates to misconduct, as it relates to different formats of officer-involved shootings and excessive force. So that was passed, I believe, last summer. We had to go through a period of time to be put into action as it relates to the legislation. Then we worked to get the members of the Citizen Review Board to be trained. They received all their training this past January, and of course, COVID happened. And so we will have our very first hearing for the Citizen Review Board sometime in July. And so from a Citizen Review Board to a no-knock warrant threat assessment, also it was a crying shame that the city of Little Rock, for funding reasons, had not prioritized body-worn cameras. This administration in the 2020 budget included funding from body-worn cameras, and that's already we've already went through the request for qualification process, selected a vendor, and it's going before the board to complete the contract, I believe somewhere around $750,000. And so we will have 250 to 265 of our police officers to be outfitted with body-worn cameras. And so as it relates to all of that, it ties to this administration's ACT plan to be accountable, to be clear, to be transparent. Many of the things that the peaceful protesters are protesting for, they are the things we've already implemented. But guess what? There's still more work to do. There's some concerns with residency, but there are also practical reasons that may not be feasible to do that here in Little Rock. And we have to understand that Little Rock may not be the same as any other city we have on our practicalities, but there are more issues that those protesters have presented. And again, we've met with many of the young organizers over the last week. Actually met with another earlier today for about an hour. And so we're continuing to get many of those concerns, listening to those concerns. If it's feasible to implement and lines up with this administration's ACT plan, which many do, many of that's done because we've already worked on most of it, but there are more things to add and that we're considering to implement. So that's exactly what we're doing, Rachel. Shelby?
Does a designation of an organization by President Trump change how you guys respond to these people if you come across them during your protest?
Shelby, say it one more time just so I can make sure the viewers heard your question.
President Trump recently declared Antifa as a terrorist organization in the United States. Does that classification
Shelby's asked the question, since President Trump has declared organizations like Antifa as terroristic organizations, does that change how we address our engagement and enforcement when we encounter them? Chief Humphrey?
So it's yes and no. And the reason I say that is because, you know, people do have a right to assemble. And so if there's peaceful assembly, no. But at the same time, I will say that they may be scrutinized more based on the information that we have. And when I say scrutinized, vetted more. And so are there different ways of handling that? Absolutely, which would be different strategics and things like that without going into the specific details. So it could lead to a different, higher step of an elevated process of handling. It's based on intelligence that we receive and the actions of the participators during the events.
We got two more questions, and then we're going to conclude the briefing. If there's two more questions. Two more. Rachel? Today's special call Board of Directors meeting relates to Little Rock Public Safety. As you know, in these trying times and when you have to have the board members are policymakers. The mayor has the position of being a policymaker as well as the chief executive officer. And sometimes it's hard to share as much information as possible during these trying times. And so we wanted to create a special call meeting to discuss Little Rock Public Safety with the board members, because we understand and respect that they too get as many questions as I do or Chief Humphrey does, and we want to make sure they have all the accurate information so they can respond. And so that's the reason. And the reason for this meeting is to ensure that the City of Little Rock residents understand Little Rock's perspective as we're entering not only the pandemic, as we had many press conferences during the early stages of the pandemic, but particularly now with the national protests of George Floyd and other black men and women that have died. Last question. Melissa? The question Melissa asked, how do you confirm if someone is from Antifa? Chief Humphrey?
Yeah, intelligence and, information that we receive from other agencies. And also there are individuals who may have vacated their positions, or they talk about it proudly. So basically just a lot of intelligence and sometimes word of mouth that has to be vetted.
Well, and thank you for that, Chief Humphrey. Before we close, I want to spend this time sharing appreciation. We want to share appreciation to the men and women of the Little Rock Police Department who are waking up every day to protect and serve and maintain peace here in the city of Little Rock. We commend them for putting their lives on the line in the midst of a pandemic, and the lives in the midst of anything. And so we want to share our appreciation to the Little Rock Police Department. We also want to share our appreciation because we understand we're in turbulent times. There are calls for additional assistance. We want to appreciate every member of the law enforcement, but also in these unprecedented times of the pandemic, but also these times of national movement as it relates to many different policies we discussed today, that we share our appreciation to peaceful protesters, because peaceful protesters have been the galvanizing unit for many of challenges that needed to have some change in a positive fashion. The United States, the city of Little Rock would not be where we are today without peaceful protesters. So we stand in solidarity with peaceful protesters. We appreciate you. We love you. We're going to do everything possible to listen to the concerns, to be responsive to those concerns, and put those concerns into action, into actionable policy, as we've already done since starting this administration, and we'll continue to do as we move forward. And so we stand in solidarity with you. But also, as the mayor of the city, we do have a curfew. And so even as I shared yesterday, that I have to abide by my own curfew. And so from that standpoint, when I say abide from my own curfew, I can't be present at certain things and then that be used as an excuse for us being outside of the curfew. However, I do have a workforce exemption because I work 24/7. But we also recognize that my presence sometimes can be confusing. But again, we stand in strict solidarity with peaceful protesters, and we understand that we wouldn't be here today without a Little Rock 9. There's no Frank Scott Jr., and there are a lot of peaceful protesters to make that happen, and we're grateful for you. I want to make sure that is very clear. And then finally, as we already have given great thanks to the members of the law enforcement community, to the members of peaceful protesters, we also want to say great thanks to the members of the freedom of the press and members of the press community, because you are covering in a fair and impartial way what's going on in these trying times. And for our generation, this is our movement, and we have to do it and make sure that there's fair and impartial information and accurate information, because we also, while this is our movement, this is an environment of inaccurate information sometimes. So that's the reason why we're going to continue to have these frequent briefings to ensure that Little Rock's perspective is shared as we move forward. And again, we will maintain peace, protection of the city of Little Rock, and we also will promote and stand in solidarity with peaceful protesters. Thank you so much, and have a blessed day.